I'm Joe Reingold, and I'm interviewing Jack Molad today. It is February 20th, 2020. Hello, good afternoon, Jack.
First of all, I want to thank you and the Federation for doing that. I'm honored and humbled by all the things you're doing.
Oh, it's our pleasure.
The more you do it, you cut me down to size, like a blade in the grass. My parents came from Russia. My mother came from Minsk, Western Russia, and my father came from Ukraine, Moldova, between Russia and Romania. And they came to Palestine in second Aliyah, very, very early in 1906. At that time, away from Europe, Eastern Europe and Western Europe came to Palestine, and these were the first people who settled on the land and began to cultivate the land. Of course, they got malaria because there were swamps all over the country. My father also got malaria working there. So it's a whole story about him getting to Palestine. And my wife, my mother also came very early. They got married in Jaffa, near Tel Aviv. I was born with my brothers in Tel Aviv. The city was very small, first generation of suburbs, of native Israelis. Very proud to be, and we were very busy thinking about the land most of the time. We were not religious, we were secular. Most of our minds was free Palestine from the British. So it was an intensive kind of living in Palestine as we grew up. There was a whole story about the Haganah that tried to push the British out. I was in Haganah and my brother was in the Irgun. They didn't get along very well, but time went by. And I think it was my brother, the Irgun underground, that really was responsible to push out the British out of Palestine. So we're very proud of that. One day it came to an end and they left and we started. Growing out in Palestine was very, very nice. In high school, in the summers, we went to the kibbutz, where the Haganah taught us what to do and all that. But it was beautiful years in a high school. Just before the war started, one day I rented a motorcycle and picked my friend and went on the city, in the main city, Ben Yehuda, and I got in a terrible crash. That crash broke my leg, and my friend who injured behind me, unlucky for him, he was well and went to the front, the beginning of the war, and he died in the first war, in the first month of the war. My leg was in a cast for 6 months, so I didn't go to the front. I believe that this is one of the reasons I'm still alive today, because God spared me there. Growing in Israel, most of the time we were doing sport. I was swimming competition, basketball competition, playing soccer all the time. Also born near the beach, we were beach people all the time on the beach. So growing up, that was our life. Very happy on Saturdays on the beach and mostly sport, here and sport there, and thinking about the British all the time. Of course, the Arabs were right on the other corner waiting for us. They thought that the British will leave and they would come in and take over. So did the British thought so. But the British left and the War of Independence started. After a few months I entered the army and served through the War of Independence. And Baruch Hashem, with God's help, we slowly drove the British a little bit out. Finally it came to a head when they hung 3 Israelis and the Irgun stopped 3 soldiers, British soldiers, and hung them in the orchard. That brought the whole confrontation into an end. And Britain, the government said we had it enough and we're going to the UN. So that's how we drove the British out of Palestine. We're very proud of that. So there was, the UN voted one day, and I'm sitting up in a balcony in my 3rd floor and I hear downtown Israel, downtown Tel Aviv, singing and dancing, and I'm singing, oh my God, I can't go. And they just voted for recognition of the state of Israel, the division of the country, and we went bananas. Well, friends came to me, motorcycles and cars picked me up, went downtown, and God, it was one of the highlights in the life in Israel. It was beautiful. Now, we finished high school, and I told my parents I want to go to the United States to study. Some of my friends are there, and I like them. So they're, okay, send your high school diploma and see what happens. We sent a high school diploma. 3 universities accepted us: UCLA, Southern California, and St. Louis University. Now, it so happened that they wouldn't let Israelis leave the country in that early, only if you study something that will help the security of the state of Israel. So I picked up aeronautical engineering because this was one of the professions that Israel said they are going to need. So that's why I picked up it. And I went to St. Louis University because my friends were there. So they said, Jack, come over. And so I went to St. Louis. Little did I know what was California University like. So I came to St. Louis, East St. Louis, Aeronautical Engineering, Parks Air College. In college, the first year, my parents both passed away. So it was very tough in the first year, and money stopped coming, and I had to start working in the second. And you name it, and I did it. I worked in everything you can think of: gas station, washing windows, even pushing women on a dancing floor for Fred Astaire studio. So all these things together. 2 years into the college, I went into St. Louis and got a job in the synagogue for the first time. B'nai Emunah congregation in University City, which is in St. Louis. So I began to teach Hebrew school, and for 1 year I teach. At the end of the year, Rabbi Bernard Lipnik, alav shalom, called me in and said, Jack, how come the parents want their children to be in your classroom? There's no room in your class and they all want to come. What's going on? I said to him, Rabbi, I don't know. Sometimes I tell them stories about Israel. Of course you do. I mean, they sit down and listen to you. The following year, I proceeded to be youth director of B'nai Emunah. At the end of the study, Rabbi called me in and I said, here's my diploma. I'm going to work in aeronautical engineering in Lambert Field in St. Louis. Rabbi said, Jack, you are not going there. We are ready to pay you whatever they pay. You're going to work here 1 year and see how you feel. I think that this is where you belong. I said, Rabbi, all right, we'll try it 1 year. After 1 year try, he and I both knew where I belong. The Rabbi says, this is it, everybody here. So I became school director and youth activities in 1960 for the first 4 years on the professional life in St. Louis, being director of school and youth activities. After 4 years, we got a job offer from several things. It was Omaha, Nebraska, offered me a higher pay, and I said, well, it's time we do some more money. So we moved from St. Louis to Omaha, Nebraska.
Who's the we?
The whole family.
Oh, okay.
Moved from St. Louis to Omaha, Nebraska in 1964. Omaha was a small town, and of course, I enjoyed very much teaching and youth director and all, and I became very involved in the Midwest region, USY. It so happened those conventions, the regional and national conventions, got me on the spot. I mean, I led singing, and they said, where's Joe Ruach? Bring him here, give him the microphone, we're going to hear him, blah, 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 blah. So it was a big thing. And the regional director said, Jack, you are doing something on those conventions. I'm very happy to do it. One day, they made me director of the Midwest region for a couple of years. So after 8 years, I get a phone call from Dallas, Texas. Rabbi Nissim Wernick calls me up. Now, I met Rabbi Wernick in Esther K. Newman in Omaha. It was a camp outside the city, and everybody in the city was going there. I was the director of activities in the camp. So Rabbi Wernick came in there, and he and I played basketball against the whole camp. And then he watched me leading service and leading the Birkat Hamazon singing. So he says, Jack, you're doing a good job. I said, oh, thank you. So he knew me firsthand. So on the phone, he says, Jack, you're coming to Dallas. Rabbi, I'm not looking for a job now. Jack, we send you the tickets, and next week you're coming in. So we talked to my wife and my kids, and they all said, well, we're going to try. So I came to Dallas to share the Israel congregation. The committee, the school committee, sat down with me and for an hour discussed the situation. They asked me to leave the room. I left the room. 20 minutes I came back and said, Jack, you're hired.
I'm going to stop you for a second. You have to back up for just a minute because you skipped a chapter. First of all, where and when did you meet your wife, and when did your family grow? And then jump back ahead to Dallas.
I met my wife in St. Louis in a dance, University City. A lot of Jewish kids were there and we met there. Then she used to come and visit me in East St. Louis. We had a synagogue there, we went there and friends there. And she came in and out and we started dating, and finally we got married at a small synagogue in East St. Louis.
Okay.
So we got married. The children were born in St. Louis,
All
in
right.
University City, and grew up there from a tiny room when Miriam was born, and then staying all night with Miriam born, and then Steve was born, so they grew up in St. Louis. St. Louis was beautiful for us. The weather was very cold in St. Louis, but that's where they grew up a little bit until they got to teenage. Also, in Omaha, kids used to come to my house every Saturday afternoon to study Torah. So it was a big thing. You go to Mr. Molad's house, you study Torah, then you go out and you play football. So everybody studying, playing was very nice. So that's how the kids grew in Omaha, Nebraska, and they got a lot of friends there. And I don't think they were very happy about the move because the roots are already there, and they have friends and teenagers and all those things. I think it was hard on both of the kids of mine. But we had to do the move. Bethel Synagogue was a small synagogue. Shared Israel had 1,800 families, 400 kids in the school, so it's something I wanted to go to a bigger school. So we made a move, and I was happy for that. So we moved into Dallas. In Dallas, very interesting, the second year in my school in Dallas, I went to the Federation one morning, and I asked to talk. I think it was Mr. Donsky, the head of the Federation at that time, and two more people sat with me, and I said, listen guys, I'm leading tours to Israel for several years. I think that we can do here a job taking teenagers to Israel, and they study for 6 weeks in Israel. I think it's one of the best educational programs you can see. So they said, okay, let's bring all the people, rabbis, so all the rabbis from the synagogue and educational directors all came to the Federation, a big meeting. At the meeting, I laid down what I do with the kids in Israel and how it works, how the education is conducting there, and all the things we do, the study there. And I thought this is one of the best programs that I can think of. They talked it over and they came to a meeting next week and they said, Jack, the Federation decided to do it. Very happy to do it. So in 1974, the Federation set a little card outside. The Dallas Teen Tour is on for that summer. I was very happy about it, and we started with the first tour in 1973. Every summer, it was part of my life. 6 weeks in Israel was a very highlight of educational programs. So I was very happy doing it all the time. In Israel, as I sat with the kids one evening at the hotel in the dining room, in a corner very quietly, I said to the teenagers, kids, listen, tonight I'm not talking to you. I'm not talking to the 80% of you. Tonight I'm talking to the 20% of you that only shows up from time to time. they all stare up at me. I could see the white of their eyes. And they said, Jack, we hear you. From that time on, somehow I felt that I'm getting closer and deep into the kids, involving in their growth and their thinking and their well-being. They sat down and talked to me all kinds of things. I could see their growing, maturing in the summer. In services, they wanted to do more. They wanted to read the books. They want to know what's this. They want to know more about Israel. Every morning on the bus, I talked to the kids for the first 30 minutes in the morning. It was all routing and singing and talking to them. They said, this is a great time every morning with Jack on in the bus going. In the evening, we used to have a little program, service and talking to them. I realized that there is a great impact that they have in Israel, and I kept on going. The impact grew with the years. Every year I do it a little bit better. And finally, toward the end, I really thought that we are influencing the growth of the kids. The tours went 15 years in a row. There's only 1 year that the tour split. They said that perhaps I'm too orthodox. So, you know, okay, so the Reform do their tour and we did our tour. But the next year, we got back together and ran the rest of the year. By the way, the other tour was led by Ofer Molad. So there are 2 Molads leading the tours in that particular summer. So we grew up very, very interesting. So at the end of the tours, I got sick in 1989 and I could not lead the tour anymore. So the tour came to an end. I got some memorabilia from the kids from the summers that one album is just out of the world that I showed people around. They wrote something about me that really was something very big for us. And I don't know if you have the album or not, but I will give you the album.
Did you donate it to the archives here?
Every one of the tour wrote something for me, so it was very touching. So we got out of charity, so I retired, and after 1 year, I said, I think I'm going to start working. I'm not going to sitting home. So Fern Farkas told the people at Shari, at Anshe Emmett in Plano, listen, I know Jack, you ought to bring him over, he's really something. So I came over to Anshe Emmett, and they talked to me, and I joined Anshe Emmett as the director of their school. And from then on, I worked in Anshe Emmett. Later on, I continued in Anshe Torah. So I worked until 2004 as a principal, and later on, I kept staying in the synagogue in Anshe Torah and teach the kids religious school. And actually, I'm teaching all the years, and I'm still teaching today. So basically, this is the story. I'm not sure if I skipped things, but...
No, it's wonderful. Show us what you have there, your book.
I'm proud of this book. This is my life in Israel, growing up in Palestine, and all the details of the underground and life there, how life was difficult and things we did there, how we grew up, we pushed the British out. So I think this is my life story.
What's the name of it? What's the title?
Growing up in Palestine. So you can hear.
Very good, thank you. That's wonderful. Okay. Did you ever have any regrets about moving away?
No, I think I liked it because it was a bigger place and I was more involved, of course. The Shared Israel was almost 2,000 families, also 400 kids. I mean, the school was very large, and I was very happy. The big story about me is I entered classes when I was a principal, and every time I'm walking in classes, I said, kids, if you answer this question, you get a chocolate bar. So they jump out, so I give a chocolate bar to anyone to answer my question. So they all waited for me every day. When is Mr. Molad coming in, and when is he coming in? The junior congregation on Saturday morning used to be like maybe 10, 15 kids used to show up. When I took over, I told them, kids, anybody can read this line and sing, you get a chocolate bar. So next circuit, chocolate bars on junior congregation. Lo and behold, there are 40 kids Saturday morning in junior congregation. And guess who's giving me the chocolate bar? The parents did. This is Jack, here it is. You can give it to the kids. So this has gone on and on, the story about the chocolate bars, and I just kept it on all the time. I felt really good about it. The kids looking forward, and by all means, let them get it. So I do it all the way to today.
And what happened to your aeronautical engineering career? It never materialized, huh?
When Rabbi Lipning said, "You belong here," my degree went into a drawer. And this was the end of my engineering career.
Did you ever pursue a degree in education, or you just did it informally and then formally? No? Yes? Yeah? What?
What? What picture?
She said yes. Miriam said you did have a degree, or
A degree with a picture?
in education. Oh,
Time out.
okay, time out. Schooling for education.
Back in St. Louis at B'nai Yemuna, the rabbi asked me to go to New York to the Jewish Theological Seminary. So I went there for 2 summers and studied in the seminary. So, and then every summer I studied with the seminary in St. Louis and in Omaha all the time, going all the time. And of course, I attended all the educators' assembly in upstate New York was a big thing for us. Studied there and all that. I lecture a lot to teachers and kids and principals and seminars in Judaism all the time. I also made a master degrees in education in North Texas University.
Okay.
So these are my 2 degrees, aeronautical and
Right.
masters in education.
Wonderful. It was definitely beshert, right?
Okay.
Definitely. So tell us, how has your family grown since you've been here?
It was hard on them in the beginning
Yeah.
because they had to get along, but we had a great time coming in Dallas. It's a bigger community and more activities, going to the GCC and going to share it all the time, kept us busy. The kids went through school, through high school, and then of course college. Miriam to college and Steve went to college, and the years went by quickly in Dallas. The kids were wonderful here. We enjoyed Dallas so much. And finally, they graduated college and left, and they came back to live with us. So they both study in Texas University, in Austin. Anything else, Miriam?
Yes, got married. How did their families grow? Grandchildren, great-grandchildren? Tell us about that.
Mary had 2 beautiful girls and a little boy. That took my whole heart with this. Starting with Molly, was born in one little room in University City, and that's where we lived there for the first year near the synagogue. I could walk to the synagogue. Miriam had to stay half the night with Molly shaking up the thing in the little room for her. She crying all the time. This was a little experience. Then we moved out from the little one-room apartment to Canterbury Garden, where we had a bigger place to live in. And there, Steve was born a year and after here, after a year and a half after Miriam. So now I forgot to tell you what I was. Now, go back to her children.
Okay.
After Molly, Sophie was born. Beautiful girl, also somewhere. And then after Sophie, Ari, the little boy. So we grew up, and I had a great time with my grandchildren. Miriam started her business in a small little apartment, and she worked in framing. So she got framing into the bathroom and hanging on the door and said, "Hey, Miriam, what's going on here?" She said, "Dad, we're beginning here." So in a bathroom, in a little room, that's how she started to work on frames. And pull over frames, and then they decide that's what they're going to do. Out of that little tiny room in the bedroom, they grew up a little more, and lo and behold, it got to be a big business. Miriam and Paul were working on framing, and it was Southwest Airlines, and the kids grew up very beautiful and went to school, to high school, and to college, and it's a beautiful life as the kids grow up, my grandchildren. My great-grandchildren, the story goes that, time out.
Okay. Yeah.
And your influence.
Where are your grandchildren and great-grandchildren now? That's what yeah.
I'm beginning to learn,
Yeah.
because of my background and my roots. My grandchildren took off on all my background, where I born, and one time in Tel Aviv they wanted to see where I lived, so we went in there and so on. They got attached to the stories, and they got attached to Israel. Molly went to Israel to work there, come back, and then went back there. And I realized that my grandchildren are attracted into Israel. And when Sophie told me one day, Grandpa, Papa, we're going to Israel, I said, couldn't be, really? Yes, Grandpa, we're going to Israel too. So there we go. Both of my granddaughters went to Israel and settled down with their children. Sophie, with the two kids, she had Kobe and Moshe, the two boys, and Molly has Tali and Dina. Just a year ago, Dina is born the same day that I am. Today, we held the birthday for me and for Dina at the same time. It was a wonderful thing. It was beautiful.
That's great.
So Dina is beautiful, and Molly is singing to me on the phone, "Happy birthday, Papa." Beautiful. Then Ari comes to me. I thought he was going to stay here with us. I said, "Papa, I got a job in Israel." I said, "No, you too?" "Yes, Papa, I want to be there with my family." So he made Aliyah too. So all my grandchildren there and my great-children, my whole family now is in Israel, where my roots were. So it finally struck me that that's where the roots are.
They've made full circle. They've come back around.
Right.
So do you have a hope of moving back there one day?
Yes, I do. I hope to go to Israel and maybe live the rest of my life there with my grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Hopefully so.
Where do they live? What area?
They live in Jerusalem, all three of them.
Okay.
And they talk to me almost every day on the phone. Every day. "Papa, how's it going?" My wife does not feel well. She's a little ill, so it's a little rough. The kids are calling her all the time to see how she feels.
Right.
So,
Okay. This is a tough question, but see if you can answer this. Besides your family, what else can you point to that you are the most proud of in your life? Tough question, right?
I think that my 15 years leading the tour to Israel 6 weeks was probably the highlight of my educational career. I didn't realize how many, over 700 teenagers went with me to Israel. And I think that if I had something to do with the life of 700 teenagers, I think this is some kind of accomplishment. And I'm very proud of it, and it's very touchy for me. I can't read what they write because I choke up all the time. But what they write about me is just killing me, when I read the things. I can't read it. But I realize how influence I had for so many, over 700 teenagers. So I think this is probably the highlight of my career, my educational career anyway. Also, I was happy to do well in high school, in the Congregational High School. I thought their kids came and the high school grew up, so it was also, and the kids who came back from Israel stay in our high school, in Jewish high school. I was also proud of that. So that's where it is.
Can you put into words a little bit about the Dallas that you came here, what it looked like, and what Dallas looks like now, the difference since you've gotten here?
Well, when I came here, I was so busy going with the young children at home and seeing that they're happy all the time and doing the best I can in the small synagogue, and Bethel synagogue. And both of my kids were bat mitzvah and bar mitzvah in that little synagogue. So we had some very happy life in Omaha. And then finally we move on to Dallas. Dallas in the beginning few years were a little bit tough, settled down and all that, but little by little we got used to it and we grew up and life began better and better all the time.
How do you see the Jewish population changing from when you came here till now? Do you see any changes in it?
I think that the Jewish population moved north, and I could see it in Shared Israel, where the school got smaller and smaller. They moved to Plano and all moved, and the day school opened, and so my school getting smaller all the time. I realized that the Jewish population is moving northward. All the people I know are Shared Israel, but their children are already in Plano. So many of the kids, many of the people in Plano, the parents, come and say, Jack, you taught our children at Shared Israel. Now you teach our children here at Anshe Torah. So it was an interesting thing.
Well, I want to tell you, it's absolutely a pleasure to see you and be with you and interview you. Happy birthday.
Thank
many,
you so
many,
much.
many more. Du das Leben bis 120, right?
Thank you. I'm sorry sometimes I couldn't get...
You did a great job. You did wonderful, and you've helped so many children on their road to Jewish education, so thank you so much.
Thank you
Jack.
so much for doing it.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
There are a few things in Israel, in the tour, that stands out on my mind. First of all, the kids were going on hikes every day almost, and they said, Jack, where are we going today? It was a big thing to hike every morning. We go, and that somehow toughened them physically. They said, Jack, where are you going to take us today? What mountain is coming next? Masada. Everybody walked. Masada was a big thing. Now, we went to Sinai. We slept in bags, and cooked there. There were things we did in Israel was phenomenal. We also went to Sinai, and 2 summers we climbed Mount Sinai. I want to know how many mothers can say in America that they have climbed Mount Sinai. My wife did. Helen came with me all the way on top of Mount Sinai. I'm so proud of her. She has a picture holding a goat in her hand with a Bedouin next to her. It was a phenomenal picture. So there are a few things there in Israel. Another thing is, in Jerusalem, we're sitting on Temple Mount and looking at the Dome of the Rock. And they hear all about Temple Mount and Temple. David Jenico raised his hand and said, Jack, can't we destroy this Dome of the Rock and build our own temple here? Everybody, hey. Well, David, I'm very sorry that we cannot do that. So there's, why, Jack? Well, because we're Jews. Jews don't do that. We can't just erase it and drive the people and start. We just cannot do that, David. So he said, this is our Temple Mount, Jack. And it was very interesting. I mean,
So you turned a bunch of teenage Jews into radicals. Is that what you're saying?
Can we get the Temple Mount back?
Right. Well, we wonder that all the time, don't we? Yeah, that's a great experience.
Things is so great.
Yeah.
The Dead Sea was phenomenal, we go down the Dead Sea. Masada was great. We go down Mount Arbel. People don't do it, I do it. people of tours don't do it, I do it because I learned how to do it. So the kids sit on top of Mount Arbel, look down, and the cars are that small. And they say, Jack, look at that. So the kids were going down Mount Arbel. So they said, are we using a parachute, Jack? I mean, we're not going down. How are you going to fly down? Well, we went down. The boys went on the road and they're gone and finally, and they looked and said, Jack, we can't believe we came down from Mount Arbel. Another thing, in Jerusalem, in the lobby, Friday night, was a beautiful hotel. And we were there, and there was another group from Houston. Friday night, I go down to the lobby, all my kids are down, and here comes the Houston kids. Well, my kids look like it's Friday night. They were dressed in it, they looked. The other two somehow did not look like it Friday night. And I was proud looking at my kids. I says, boy, this is Friday night, this is Shabbat for my kids. And it's not like it everywhere. So I was so proud of a moment like that. So my kids, I'm proud. Not only that, I got a note from the Jewish agency in Jerusalem. Dear Jack, we want to tell you that your tour, the Dallas Teen Tour, is one of the top performing tours in Israel. Year in and year out, and we want you to do it, to know it. I said, Menashe Post, head of the Jewish Agency, Menashe, thank you so much. I was proud of that too.
Right. Well,
Okay.
that's right. It's your influence.
Yeah, a few things